Hey, what's up, guys? It's Mike and Matt here with your Week 8 waiver wire pickups. We got a bunch of really big teams with a lot of players who are obviously either on your fantasy teams or with some of your league mates. So there's going to be a mad scramble of the waiver wire this week. We're looking at Baltimore, Chicago, Houston, Indy, San Diego, and the Titans. Jake Locker back. So there's just a bunch of guys out there, like I said, who are on bye. You're going to need to pick some guys up, fill them in. We got a couple guys who we're looking at. First and foremost, as always, on Roto Junkies, we look at the most important position on the field, the quarterbacks. Who are we liking this week?
I'm liking Ryan Tannehill in Miami. I think that matchup's going to be great. New England's secondary is a little suspect. I don't know who you have this week.
I guess my biggest thing when I'm looking at Miami and Tannehill is the point totals really haven't been there, but he's been solid. We're talking about a bye week guy. If you're sitting on someone, like I said, like Jake Locker or an Andrew Luck, maybe you're sitting there with a Matt Straub combo or Jay Cutler, you're in some trouble. That might be a guy to pick up, at least for this week. He's consistent,
Out.
Yeah, Flacco's down too, so we're looking, between that, what I'm looking at realistically, Geno Smith just put up 20 points against them with the Queeps to leave out. Matt Ryan's put up big games against them. Some of these guys big names, some of these guys not so much. I think Tannehill can have a decent game with him. Another guy who I'm looking at who I'm almost wanting to throw up just mentioning his name, and that's Carson Palmer. That's a guy who all year, we were talking about last week, he's absolutely terrible, he's terrible. Well, he's played 5 of the top 10 passing defenses. Maybe their numbers are a little inflated because they face Carson Palmer.
Yeah.
I guess my big thing is, I'm looking at the Carolinas of the world, the San Francisco, Seattle's, teams that are just absolutely crushing opposing quarterbacks. Now he gets that juicy matchup against Atlanta. Just think about some of the names that have beaten up on Atlanta this year. Geno Smith, Mike Glennon, your sister. Everyone can beat the Falcons this year, it seems, playing quarterback. Who else? There was one other guy we were looking at.
Dalton? I said Dalton, right?
I like Andy Dalton.
There we go.
How do you not like the red rifle? The guy's putting up numbers. He's got A.J. Green back in sync again. You have A.J. Green. You got to like this last week.
I loved A.J. Green's matchup last week. That was great, but it's even looking better this one.
Looking up against the Jets, they just gave up a decent game to Tom Brady. Granted, the pick six wasn't that good, and he didn't have any touchdowns, but I saw Brady moving the ball down the field a little bit easier than he has been. In a few games going forward. I could see Andy Dalton, at home. He's a lot better on the road, honestly, than at home, which is just one of those weird situational split things. I could still see a decent game from Andy Dalton here. Once again, if you're looking at a bye week, fill-in replacement type guy, that even 10 to 12 points from your quarterback, while it's not a great game, it's enough to get you by and let your stars carry you.
Absolutely,
that's what we've been talking about here. Speaking of a situation like that, Doug Martin, down. He's the only big-name running back who went down this week, who isn't on bye this week. It's a mad dash to pick up Mike James this week is what it's looking like. Do you have any real thoughts on the kid?
I think he's going to be a great receiving running back. He's going to be looking at, definitely a couple receptions. Great for PPR leagues. I'd shy a little bit away from him if it wasn't a PPR league, but again, if you're playing PPR, I don't think you can go wrong with a weekly buy substitute.
Yeah, he's one of those Obadiah type of players where he's going to catch maybe 4 or 5 balls out of the backfield, and that's what's going to make your week. What he can do on that, especially against the Carolina team, very good between the tackles running. You saw it this week. Zach Stacy put up decent numbers, but it was because of the receiving and the touchdowns there. The kid's got he's got 4.58 speed. He is quick. He's a bullish running back. If you can get him the ball in space, he's like a little wrecking ball. I don't love Mike James. It's more of a stash going forward, but like you said, PPR leagues.
They got great hands. He'll be good out of the backfield. So
okay.
For non-PPR leagues, I'm liking Chris Ivory this week. He had a great game last week. Yesterday, I guess, not last week. But,
you're getting 3 yards a carry, but if they keep handing it to you 34 times, you're going to put up numbers eventually.
Hey, you can't argue with those touches.
No, you can't, and that's my big thing is I'm looking, like I said, Andy Dalton has been putting up decent numbers his last couple of weeks, over 300 yards and a couple of scores. Kid's kind of dynamite. So you look at now Chris Ivory coming to town, a guy who ran the ball 34 times, kept the clock running, kept the ball out of Brady's hands. You got to assume they're going to do the same thing, at least try to, against Andy Dalton.
Absolutely.
I like him for 25-plus touches. If he can get that, he can put up, like we said, a decent numbers there. We're looking once again, Ray Rice, Forte, Foster, Tate, T. Rich, if you're that kind of guy. Matthews, Woodhead. So many guys on bye this week. If you got Chris Ivory, if he's available in your league, he's up there in, I think it was like 48% of leagues for Yahoo, probably more for other sites. You may want to grab him up. Speaking of absolute desperation, guys, if Roy Halou Jr. is out there in your league, 10 touches this week, 3 touchdowns, but 10 touches. He's putting up the numbers without getting that, he's putting up the numbers for a flex maybe, that 6 to 8 point range. If you're desperate at RB2, I mean, you're talking to a guy who started Joseph Randall this week. So
yeah, I'm sure Alfred Morris fans are not happy about that right now, hearing this guy's name.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing. If you can find an Alfred Morris owner in your league who's now panicking about Roy Halou stealing goal line touches, Mike Shanahan hating fantasy owners rearing its ugly head, you might want to see if you could slip in like a Torrey Smith or Pierre Garçon for Alfred Morris and, hope to get a desperate owner there. One other guy we're looking at, Zach Stacy, if he's not owned in your league, stop watching this video, go to your league, and pick him up right now. Their starting quarterback is Kellen Clemens. Zach Stacy is going to get the ball 40 times a game. They want to keep the ball out of Kellen Clemens' hands because I'm a Jets fan. I've seen Kellen Clemens play. Kellen Clemens is terrible.
Yeah, I mean, I picked up Zach 2 weeks ago, and I've been pumping him ever since. I don't know how he's not going to be picked up yet, but a lot of leagues don't have him, so if he's out there, definitely go out and get him.
Fantastic. Under 50% ownership in Yahoo. I just don't get it with some of these leagues. Wide receivers. All right, so listen to this. 7, 1, 4, 7, 7, 20. Now, if I told you it was a wide receiver in Miami who's putting those numbers, who would you guess off the top of your head?
It had to be Heartline, maybe, I don't know.
Mike Wallace hasn't been that consistent.
Yeah,
Hardline has been that consistent. You know who's been that consistent? Gibson. Brandon Gibson. The kid is an absolute monster. He's putting up over 5 catches in 4 of his 6 games so far. He's putting up, like I said, that over 7 points. And that's in a standard league, mind you. If he's in a PPR league, he's putting up double-digit points in over half of his games so far. The kid's an absolute monster, and no one talks about him. He's consistent. He got in the end zone this week. My big thing with him is if he's putting up that 8 to 10 point range without getting in the end zone, the touchdowns, maybe they come, maybe they don't, but he's still consistent.
Yeah.
I love him this week. I mean, especially Andre Johnson, Kendall Wright, Keenan Allen, obviously Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey. So many wide receivers on bye. How do you go wrong with a plug-and-play guy like Brandon Gibson?
No, it sounds fantastic.
Okay, moving on. We're looking...
Chris Durham.
I like Chris Durham.
Yeah.
How do you not like Chris Durham? I guess my big thing is Dallas, looking at them so far, they've been not shutting down, but they've been limiting wide receiver ones. Now, it's a lot different when you're wide receiver one.
Not Megatron.
Exactly. It's one thing to shut down the likes of, Malcolm Floyd or Eddie Royal and let Keenan Allen go off on you. Yeah. I guess my big thing is, though, Dallas still, they limit that wide receiver one. You saw it last week with Deshaun Jackson. Even before the injury, he wasn't doing too much. Could this be a week where Chris Durham gets a couple more looks because, Calvin Johnson's blanking it a little bit?
Yeah, and Dallas is always putting up numbers. Everyone's trying to catch up, pass the ball. So, it seems like a good matchup there. I like it. And,
think about it. Moving on, does that help you at tight end, maybe? The Brandon Pettigrews of the world?
I don't know. I'm liking Pettigrew this week just because I'm having a tight end disaster with Antonio Gates going out on bye, and then what just happened to Michael Finley yesterday. I'm probably going to be scrambling for Pettigrew, but I feel like he'd be a tight end to look at if you're trying to spread the ball around in Denver.
You touched on it. Colby Fleener's out. Garrett Graham is out. Owen Daniels still on short-term IR. Metellus Bennett out. A lot of good tight ends are out this week. If you're looking for that, just like I said, that 5 to 7 point range, just enough to keep you going through your bye week, maybe fill in for an injury guy, you can't go wrong with Brandon Pettigrew. You had Furia do his thing. He's still the tight end, too, over there. Tony Scheffler could come back any day and get himself in the mix. Fact of the matter is, Brandon Pettigrew gets targeted. I believe he got 7 targets, 5 receptions, 53 yards. Last time Calvin Johnson sat out a game. What I'm trying to get at here is if Dallas can do anything at all to limit Megatron. Now, granted, that's, it's Megatron. But if they can limit him just a little bit, I could see the guys of, Brandon Pettigrew, Chris Durham, those guys starting to go off. Real quick, wanted to touch on wide receivers. Now, we were real high on Riley Cooper last week with the Nick Foles connection. Thoughts on him going forward?
I like anybody that's going against my New York Giants secondary, but however, he had the practice squad connection with Nick Foles. You know, that's obviously apparent like 2 weeks ago. This week, obviously Nick was hurt. It was a little bit less, but he still put up the numbers. With Michael Vick coming back, I don't know if there's going to be that chemistry there that there was last week. But, again, you are playing the New York Giants secondary, which...
I mean, it'd be hard not to put up points against them. We can go back, throw on that Little Giants VHS tape from 1994, put some of those kids out there. They might be able to put up a couple points against
Absolutely.
Prince Amuka Meltdown. So, all right, just looking forward to it real quick. One thing, back to the tight ends. If Jordan Reed isn't owned in your league, stop watching this. Go pick him up. Jordan Reed's absolutely fantastic. You gotta love it. Robert Griffin III going on his little bootlegs, tearing out. He's that like safety blanket in that 8 to 10 yards when Robert Griffin III isn't taking off. Bobby Three Sticks is loving him. Jordan Reed is gaining a lot of chemistry with him. And Fred Davis healthy scratch this week. Washington believes in Jordan Reed. I believe in Jordan Reed, and you should too. All right, now the hardest thing of the week, obviously defenses. I hope you listened to us last week. Hopped on the Carolina Panthers. Great week, absolutely. You know, first couple plays, we got a return touchdown by the defense there. They're putting up crazy points. Who do you like this week in case Carolina's taken in your league?
I'm liking Oakland this week. I think their matchup with Pittsburgh is it's a solid matchup. Oakland's put up great points the last couple weeks. They put up 15, 11, 22, and 17, I believe, against matchups for them. Yeah, I can't argue with those numbers for a plug-and-play defense.
I mean, what I'm looking at, it blows my mind coming into the season if you had told me Oakland would have been one of the higher-end defenses I'm looking at, especially in bye weeks, with teams like, once again, Baltimore, Chicago, Houston. Those are three big defenses teams guys are targeting early on in the drafts, maybe taking them around too early like I did with the Texans. I'm looking at the Raiders now. They put up 0 points against Denver Broncos. You weren't starting them anyway. And they put up 4 or 5 points against Indianapolis. You weren't starting them anyway.
Yeah.
Fact of the matter is, when they're not putting up these crazy high-powered offenses, they're putting up decent numbers.
Turn the ball over.
Yeah, I mean that's what I like about them. You know, I mean they're almost like that, like just terrified. Teams don't want to play against them. Had a great game against San Diego, made them cough the ball up. They produce turnovers. Obviously, you can't predict those, but they're in some low-scoring games too. Yeah. You know, Terrell Pryor is pretty good with his ball control. Teams aren't putting up those crazy scores against Oakland like we've been used to the last 4 or 5 years. So don't let the name scare you. Oakland defense might not be the worst thing to pick up this week.
With DMC coming back, they're going to be running the ball, eating a lot of clock, so that always helps.
Wishful thinking.
Yeah.
Wishful thinking.
Wishful thinking is true.
Take it easy with that. All right. Once again, you guys know, hit us up on Facebook, like the Facebook page, Twitter at RotoJunkies, Instagram at RotoJunkies. We're putting up some great pictures. Love when you guys vote on that stuff. If you have anything at all you want to ask a question on, obviously hit us up. We'll be handling these videos. We got the trends report coming later this week, and hopefully we can get that podcast up with the start sits later on in the week. Love to hear from you guys. Great luck in week 8.
Yeah, thanks, guys.